Last week, I visited a friend who had just moved into one of those high-end co-living hubs in the heart of the city. As he led me through the lobby, it felt less like an apartment building and more like a high-tech wellness retreat. There was a vibe manager organizing a communal pottery class, free organic kombucha on tap, and a massive neon sign in the lounge that read, "Everything is shared." My friend was genuinely beaming. He told me he'd finally escaped the isolation of the modern world and found a tribe. To him, this wasn't just a place to sleep. It was a curated lifestyle that promised to solve his loneliness with a single monthly subscription. But then, we went up to his actual living space. It was essentially a high-end prison cell, a micro-suite, where he didn't even own the bed sheets. When I asked what happens if he wants to paint a wall or host a private dinner, he laughed and showed me the community handbook on his phone. Any deviation from the shared experience required a digital request. As we sat in the communal kitchen, surrounded by 20-somethings scrolling on their phones in total silence, despite the mandatory social hour scheduled for 7 p.m., the atmosphere felt strangely sterile. It wasn't a neighborhood. It was a managed environment. The real shift happened when I asked him about the future, about marriage or buying a home. His expression instantly tightened. He started talking about how property ownership was an outdated burden and how the nuclear family was a failed experiment. He used these big academic words to justify why he was paying 3 times the market rate for a dormitory room. But his voice lacked conviction. He sounded like he was reciting a brochure. That sudden pivot from the high of belonging to the defensive justification of having no private life was chilling. It made me realize that these sleek communal spaces aren't the rebirth of community at all. They're something much more clinical. We're witnessing a social patch being applied to the ruins of the family unit, a high-tech prosthesis designed to keep us in a state of managed permanent adolescence while calling it progress.
That is, wow, that's a profound and, I have to say, a pretty disturbing observation.
It really was.
Because what you ran into there with the vibe manager and the microsuite, that's not just a weird quirk in the housing market.
No.
It's the physical manifestation of a much, much deeper societal shift. We're looking at a fundamental restructuring of how we relate to space, to property, and, to each other.
It felt like stepping into an alternate reality. And that phrase that came to mind, the social patch, that's what really stuck.
It's a social patch. I like that.
The idea that we're trying to engineer our way out of a problem that is, at its core, completely structural. And well, that's what we're here to do today. We've got a massive stack of sources to go through to really understand this.
We do.
We have sociological theory from Emil Durkheim, some pretty heavy political science on the concept of the managerial state. And then we have these really personal narratives, diaries almost, from people living inside these places.
And the sources, they're pretty clear on the trajectory here. We're not just talking about high rents or, trendy interior design.
Not at all.
The whole mission of this deep dive is to explore how the collapse of the nuclear family and, frankly, the death of the homeownership dream are being handled.
Right. Yeah.
And they're not being met with organic solutions or policy fixes to restore what was lost. Instead, they're being met with this managed social engineering.
And economic structures that look, if we're being honest, a lot like a digital form of feudalism.
It's a heavy term, managed social engineering.
It is. It implies intent, right? It implies that the loneliness my friend felt and that, millions of people feel is being seen as an input for a system. A problem to be managed, not solved.
A bug to be patched.
Exactly. A bug to be patched. So I want to start with the human element of this engineering. We have a narrative in our research about a woman. Her name's Elena. And it's just a jarring look at what community looks like when it's run by an algorithm.
Yeah, Elena's account is essential. It's what takes us from the glossy marketing brochures, the, happy people drinking free kombucha, to the operational reality of it all.
So, okay. Elena is 34. She's a marketing consultant in London, so she's the perfect target demographic, right?
Yeah.
Professional, single, high disposable income, but completely time poor.
Checks all the boxes.
She moves into this premium co-living complex. But the detail that just stops you in your tracks is how her social life is handled. It's not facilitated. It's managed. She talks about a dashboard.
A dashboard for friendship. That's unsettling.
Literally. So this story describes a specific Tuesday night. She's exhausted from work, just wants to go to her room, decompress. But her phone buzzes. It's a notification from the building's community wellness app.
Oh, of course it is.
And it's a reminder, it's really more of a warning, that she hasn't attended a mandated mixology mixer in 2 weeks.
Mandated.
Mandated. And here's where it gets truly dystopian. The app informs her that her social integration score is trending downward.
We have to stop there for a second. A social integration score. I mean, this isn't just gamification anymore. This is the full-on quantification of human connection. Your belonging has a number attached to it.
And there are consequences to that number. The app, very gently reminds her that if the score dips below a certain threshold, she risks losing her eligibility for things like room upgrades or even access to certain premium common areas.
So it's a threat. A soft threat, but it's a threat nonetheless.
It's absolutely a threat. And that's where you see this transition, right? From a normal landlord-tenant relationship to something much, much more.
Invasive.
Totally invasive. In a standard apartment, you pay your rent, you're quiet, nobody bothers you, you're buying space. But here, your standing, your quality of life is tied to your performative sociability.
You have to perform community to maintain your status within the system. You're not just buying space, you're buying into a behavioral contract.
So she goes. Of course she goes. She drags herself to this rooftop bar because an algorithm told her she had to. And she describes the scene. There's a community facilitator who's basically a corporate employee.
The vibe manager.
The vibe manager, exactly. And this person is physically corralling people into groups. They're using these little conversation cards that were apparently designed by therapists to force intimacy.
Wow. How do you feel about the color blue?
I mean, who knows? But Elena said it felt like a hospital ward where the medicine was friendship and the doctors were property managers.
That analogy, the hospital ward, that's the key. That unlocks the entire theoretical framework we need here. It connects directly to this concept of the therapeutic state from the work of Thomas Saz.
Right. Saz is in our notes. I know he was a psychiatrist, very critical of the medical establishment, but how does this apply to a housing complex?
Well, Saz argued that modern society has undergone this really profound shift. We've moved from what he called the political state to the therapeutic state.
Okay, what's the difference?
The political state was concerned with things like rights, laws, order. It viewed citizens as moral agents who are responsible for their own actions. You broke a law, you get punished. Simple.
Right, a contract between the citizen and the state.
Exactly. But the therapeutic state, its job isn't to rule citizens. Its job is to cure patients. It sees its role as managing the psychological well-being of the population.
So the government, or in this case, the corporation that's acting as the government for this building, sees loneliness as a disease that it has to treat.
Precisely. It medicalizes existence. In this worldview, social problems like loneliness or, atomization, they aren't seen as structural failures of the economy or the culture. No, they're seen as a pathology inside the individual.
Loneliness isn't a condition, it's a sickness.
And if you're sick, what do you need?
An intervention.
You need an intervention, and that explains the vibe manager and the community facilitator perfectly. They're not just party planners. In this therapeutic framework, they are the agents of the cure.
They're administering the medicine.
Yes, and one of the sources even refers to the corporate entity as the therapist in chief. But here's the danger, and this is what Saz warned about decades ago. In the therapeutic state, treatment is very often indistinguishable from coercion.
That's a strong claim. I mean, how is it coercive if Elena chose to live there? She signed the lease.
It's soft coercion. It's coercion with a smile. Look at the social integration score. It forces her to socialize under the threat of losing status or amenities, right? But it masquerades as health advocacy.
We're doing this for your own good.
Exactly. The narrative is, Alina, we're worried about your isolation. We just want you to be well. And that's incredibly difficult to argue against. If a landlord says you must attend this party, you can say no. But if a wellness expert says this is for your own mental health, pushing back makes you look
irrational.
Yeah.
Or self-destructive.
It completely disarms your defense mechanisms. And in the process, it seems to just dissolve the line between what is public and what is private.
That feels like the ultimate consequence. In the traditional understanding of liberty, the liberal democratic tradition, your home is the private sphere. It's the one place where the state, the market, the public eye, they stop at the door.
You close the door, you are sovereign. If you want to sit in the dark and not speak to a single soul for 3 days, that is your right as a free individual.
But in this model, in the therapeutic state, privacy is a symptom of a sickness.
Exactly. Privacy is viewed as problematic. It's an obstacle to public health, an obstacle to community wellness. So in these hubs, your attendance is datafied, your isolation is monitored. The private sphere is effectively abolished because the management has decided that your private behavior is their business.
That surveillance of the soul, that's what's so unsettling about Elena's story. It's not just that she has to go to a party. It's that she has to want to go, or at least pretend to keep the dashboard happy. But I want to pivot to the result of all this engineering. I mean, does it even work? Do people actually feel less lonely? We have another story from a guy named Julian that suggests the answer is a resounding no.
Julian's experience is the perfect counterpoint. If Elena shows us the coercion, Julian shows us the utter failure of the result.
So Julian's a designer in San Francisco. He's living in one of these massive co-living hubs, and he refers to the whole aesthetic as manufactured joy.
That's a good term for it.
He kept a diary of his time there, and he has this one entry about the Sunday pancake ritual.
The names they give these things are always so aspirational. Ritual, synergy, mixer.
Oh, absolutely. The management organized this breakfast, and the stated goal was to create organic synergy. Julian decides to film it. He's in this huge industrial chic kitchen. There are about 40 people there. And he notes they're all eating pancakes in total silence.
40 people.
Silence. Absolute dead silence. Everyone is just scrolling on their phones. They are physically in the same room, but their minds are a million miles away. And over in the corner, there's a social coordinator with a clipboard, checking names off a list to make sure people showed up.
Documenting the synergy.
Right. And Julian whispers to his camera, and this line really stuck with me. He says, "Everyone is a member, but no one is a neighbor."
Wow, that distinction, member versus neighbor, that's absolutely critical. And it brings us right to the sociological heavyweight in our source stack, Emil Durkheim.
Durkheim. He was writing about suicide in society way back in the late 19th century. How does he explain a silent pancake breakfast in San Francisco?
Durkheim is really the father of the concept of anomie. It's a French word. It translates roughly to normlessness or deracination.
Being unruh.
Exactly. Anomie is the state that occurs when the traditional social moorings, things like religion, the extended family, the village, the shared moral covenants, when those things dissolve. When those structures crumble, the individual is left without a moral address. You feel unanchored. You're just floating.
So Julian and his 40 silent roommates are suffering from anomie.
They are floating in a social vacuum. Now, Durkheim distinguished between different types of social solidarity, and the sources apply this to modern living by contrasting what they call organic solidarity with mechanical intervention.
Okay, you have to explain that difference, because organic is a word these co-living places absolutely love to use. Organic synergy.
Right, but they're using it in the marketing sense. In a sociological sense, true organic solidarity arises from interdependence. Think of a small farming village in, say, 1850.
Yeah.
The baker needs the blacksmith needs the farmer needs the doctor. They have a shared history, shared values. They fundamentally rely on one another for survival. If a barn burns down, the neighbors show up to help.
And not because a Vibe manager sent a calendar invite.
No, they show up because they are structurally and morally bound to one another. There are real stakes. The bond is real because the need is real.
Okay, so that's organic. What's the other one?
Mechanical intervention. That's the co-living hub. The management sees the anomie, they see the loneliness, and they try to fix it with a schedule, with a clipboard. They think if we put 40 people in a room and we add sugar and music, that equals community.
But the people in that room don't actually need each other.
Not at all. They're completely independent economic units. The guy eating pancakes on your left works for Google. The woman on your right works for a hedge fund. They pay their own subscription. They have no shared fate. Durkheim described a society that was losing its bonds as a disorganized dust of individuals.
But disorganized dust. That's a powerful image.
And that's exactly what Julian saw. The co-living hub sweeps that dust into one pile, into one very expensive, well-designed room. But simply piling the dust together doesn't turn it into a brick.
You can't build anything with it.
It remains dust. And you can see it in the silence at that breakfast.
One of our sources, the Codes of Co-Living, draws a really important line between co-housing and co-living. And I have to admit, I used to think those terms were basically interchangeable.
They're not. They are fundamentally different, almost opposites. Co-housing is typically a bottom-up movement.
So it starts with the people.
It starts with the people. A group of families or friends decides, hey, we want to live together. They write a charter, they pool their money, they buy land, they design the space, they make the rules. It is an intentional community born from a foundation of shared values.
Whereas co-living.
Co-living is a top-down commercial product. It's a real estate asset class. The community isn't generated by shared values or kinship. It's generated by one thing: economic accessibility.
Which is a polite way of saying the only thing those 40 people have in common is that they can all afford the high rent, but none of them can afford a real apartment in that city.
Correct. It is a demographic cluster, not a community. And that is why the social patch always fails. You cannot mandate intimacy with a community handbook. You can't schedule synergy. The silence in Julian's kitchen is a symptom of people living together physically, but living completely apart morally and socially.
So we've touched on the psychological manipulation and the sociological failure, but we have to talk about the engine that's driving all of this.
Yeah.
I mean, why do these places even exist? Why are people like my friend or Elena or Julian paying so much money to live this way?
Yeah.
We have to look at the economic reality.
And this is where the story shifts from, just being sad to being truly systemic. The rise of co-living isn't just a lifestyle trend. It's a symptom of a massive economic displacement.
To get at that, we have the story of Marcus. And Marcus isn't a 22-year-old trying to find himself in the big city. He's 45. He's a teacher in New York City.
So a stable, middle-class profession.
Exactly. He did everything right. He got his degrees. He got a steady job. He believed in that meritocratic dream that says if you work hard and play by the rules, you buy a home and you build a life.
And instead of a home, he finds himself in a hub.
He describes it as subscribing to a bed. He doesn't have a lease. He has a membership agreement. He doesn't own any furniture. The room comes with service-integrated assets.
Just listen to that language again. The vocabulary is shifting. Assets, memberships, subscriptions. This is the language of software as a service, not housing.
And the instability that comes with it is terrifying. Marcus talks about this one event where he was forced to move floors on 24 hours notice because management was reconfiguring the space.
Reconfiguring the asset.
He had to pack his entire life into 2 suitcases. And he said he felt like a high-tech serf.
High-tech serf. That is a very, very precise term. It connects directly to the economic theory of neo-feudalism, and more specifically, this idea of techno-feudalism that economists like Yanis Varoufakis have been talking about.
Techno-Feudalism. It sounds like something out of a science fiction novel. Break that down for us. How is this feudalism?
The core of the argument is this big shift from a system based on profit to a system based on rent.
Okay.
In traditional industrial capitalism, a company makes a product, a car, a toaster, whatever, and they sell it to you. You buy it, you own it, it's yours. In this new model, these massive corporate asset holders, the cloudalists, as Varoufakis calls them, they own everything. They own the platform, the land, the building, the Wi-Fi network, even the bed sheets.
When you, the user, you own nothing. You just pay for access.
You pay a tribute, a monthly rent.
Yeah.
In feudal times, the serf worked the land but didn't own it. They gave a portion of their harvest to the lord for the privilege of existing there.
Marcus is doing the same thing. He's paying a monthly tribute to the corporate landlord. He's building no equity. He has no security of tenure. He is there entirely at the lord's pleasure.
It effectively declasses people who, by all rights, should be middle class. Marcus is a teacher. In a previous generation, he would have owned a home in Queens. Now he's a transient member.
And the sources, especially that Reddit thread, the end of home ownership, and some of Joel Kotkin's work, they really highlight this generational despair. Millennials and Gen Z are being completely locked out of the primary vehicle for wealth accumulation and stability, which has always been home ownership.
And they point to policy decisions that make it worse. The idea of urban containment comes up a lot.
Explain that.
In many big cities, you have these very restrictive planning and zoning laws, often lobbied for by existing wealthy property owners, that make it almost impossible to build new housing.
So it creates an artificial scarcity.
An extreme scarcity. And this benefits the landed elite, the people who already own property, while driving up costs for everyone else and forcing the middle class into these density traps. It forces them into the rental market forever.
So the co-living hub isn't really an innovation. It's more like a containment zone for the people who have been priced out of adulthood.
And there's another demographic angle here, specific to Marcus. He's single. We have a source from The Wire that talks about the house for Mr. Single.
That was a fascinating piece. It argues that the housing market itself actively discriminates against single people.
It does. Our society, our housing stock, our financial systems, they are all structured around the nuclear family unit. In many places, what they call moral guards, like resident welfare associations or strict co-op boards, will actively block single people from renting or buying.
They see them as risky.
They see single men, especially older single men, as unstable or somehow transient. So if you're 45 and single, like Marcus, the traditional market literally pushes you away.
You're structurally excluded, so where do you go?
You go to the hub. The hub then capitalizes on your exclusion. It markets itself as a vibrant community for the independent, but what it's really doing is monetizing the displaced.
What Marcus realized, and I think this is maybe the most frightening part of his story, is the loss of what he calls moral autonomy. It's not just about the money or the lack of equity.
This is the crux of the political argument. In the whole tradition of liberal democracy, private property is essential for liberty, and not just for wealth, but for sovereignty.
A sort of my home is my castle idea.
Exactly. If you own your home, you have a fortress, a private domain. You can paint a wall bright red if you want. You can invite whoever you want over. You can organize a political meeting in your living room without asking a manager for permission.
But if you live in a subscription pod,
you lose that civic independence. You are completely dependent on the managerial state or the corporate overlord for your very existence. If you violate the community handbook, if your social integration score drops too low, you're not just fined, you can be exiled.
you can be made homeless.
And that dependency, it keeps people in a state of what your friend realized was permanent adolescence. You cannot truly be an adult citizen if you do not possess a domain where you are the master.
This is, well, it's a lot to process. We've gone from a vibe manager in a lobby all the way to the death of civic independence. I want to try and synthesize all these threads because they're all connected. We started by calling this whole phenomenon a social patch.
Right. And if you look at the whole picture now, you can see the cycle. It's a feedback loop. It begins with the economic reality.
Step 1, economic exclusion, neo-feudalism, asset inflation. It makes family formation and homeownership impossible for a huge chunk of the population.
Step 2, this inability to put down roots causes that Durkheimian anomie, that state of normlessness, of structural loneliness. You become that disorganized dust of individuals.
Okay, so then step 3. The therapeutic state and the corporate sector see this dust. They see this loneliness.
And they step in, they say, we have a solution. But the solution is never to fix the underlying economy so you can actually afford a home. The solution is co-living.
And step 4. That solution offers managed adolescence and artificial cohesion instead of real adulthood or true community.
Exactly. It's a mechanism to manage the decline. It keeps the population functioning, it keeps them paying rent, but it denies them the stability and autonomy to ever build a real future or, perhaps, to challenge the system itself.
And this brings us to one final concept from our notes, which sounds pretty aggressive. The cognitive land grab. What does that mean?
Think about the Enclosure Acts in British history, where wealthy landowners fenced off common land that everyone used to use.
Right. They privatized the commons.
This is an enclosure of the private sphere. The community handbook, the wellness apps, the social integration scores. These are all tools extending managerial control into the most intimate aspects of our lives.
They're colonizing the space between people, the space where friendship and community used to grow organically.
They are enclosing friendship. They're enclosing the daily routine. And the result is a population that is atomized, separated from each other on a meaningful level, yet managed from above. This prevents the organic formation of any real resistance.
Because if you're just a dust of individuals worried about your social score,
you can't organize a tenants union. You can't organize a political movement. You're rendered safe for the status quo.
it's the ultimate form of control, really. You don't need a police state if you have a vibe manager and the constant low-level threat of eviction.
Precisely. It's soft totalitarianism with free kombucha on tap.
We've covered an incredible amount of ground today. We started in the shiny lobby of that co-living hub, and from there we went to the algorithm managing Elena's social life. We sat in the profound silence of Julian's pancake breakfast, and we felt the deep gnawing insecurity of Marcus's bed subscription.
Yeah.
It really feels like what we're witnessing is the bureaucratization of loneliness.
That's a great way to put it. We've effectively replaced the home, which is, a place of sovereignty, of family, of messiness and life, with the hub, a place of surveillance, subscription, and sterile order.
It's a sobering reality check for anyone who's been dazzled by the marketing of these places, myself included.
It is, and if I could leave you with one final thought to mull over, it would be this. The social patch of co-living cannot reverse civilizational entropy. It can't fix the deep problems we're facing. It merely makes the decay profitable for a new class of digital landlords.
It's a business model built on decline.
It is. And we have to realize that true social cohesion is not a function of shared amenities or vibe managers. It's the integral over time of covenants kept and responsibilities borne.
Responsibilities borne. That's the hard part.
That's the part that requires work. The vigil for traditional values, and I mean that in the sense of actual durable human connection, that vigil must be kept not in curated common rooms, but in the stubborn, unglamorous, day-to-day work of rebuilding the institutions that make individuals into citizens and houses into homes.